Welcome back with a smiling face. Important note before starting: if you are a fan of audio stories, then our Patreon account is the best platform for you. Join us on Patreon for the best audiobooks ever. Coming Together Book 2. Episode 8. Chapter 18 to 25. After about an hour of walking, I started thinking maybe I'd cuddle up with Daniel again, just to make Corey laugh. The morning had started on a light note, but it darkened fast. The sky darkened too. We'd escaped the threat of rain on our first night, but now the black clouds gathering overhead said it had only been a temporary reprieve. The rain began as a light drizzle. Being part cat, I'm not keen on rain, but I've always liked a light one, especially on a hot summer's day, tramping through the woods or rock climbing, enjoying the cool mist on my face, the sweet fresh smell of it, the inevitable rainbow afterward. But this wasn't a refreshing mist on a hot summer's day. It was an icy drizzle that slid down the backs of our necks and plopped off the end of branches and froze our ears and soaked our shoes. "Can we stop?" Haley asked. "If I see a sheltered spot, we'll hole up for a while." "Can we look for one?" "I have a blister." "We all have blisters," Sam said. "We need to keep going," Daniel said. "We lost a lot of time yesterday." "What? Are we on a schedule?" Haley said. "Is there a bus waiting to pick us up somewhere?" She sighed, then said, "I hate complaining." "So don't do it," Sam said. Haley glowered at her. "You think I like being the whiner? If Nicole was here, she'd be complaining just as much. We're tired and wet and miserable, but I'm stuck being the one who says it while everyone else just hopes I whine loud enough so we all get to stop and rest. Maya and Daniel can't complain. They need to set an example. Unless Corey's in enough pain that he snaps again, he's going to tough it out. And Sam? Well, she's not even human, so she doesn't count." "Excuse me," Sam said. "Face it, you're not one of those bendo things. You're a robot. A cyborg. Probably an evil one, programmed to murder us all in our sleep." Corey snickered. "Yet." Sam lifted a fist to Haley. "You want to try that one again, Blondie?" Haley looked at Daniel and me. "I rest my case." "Haley's right," I said. "About the complaining part. We're not on a schedule, and the harder we push, the more exhausted we'll get." I waved to the west. "The redwoods seem to thin over there. We might find a grove of ferns for some shelter." We tramped over, and as we stepped from the thick trees, we all stopped and stared. Then Corey raced forward, arms raised. "It's a road." "Oh my God! A road!" He dropped to his knees by the roadside. "Ow!" Daniel helped him back to his feet. "The knee is good," I said. "But the knee is not completely healed. Be careful." "It's a road," Corey said, pointing. "A dirt road," Haley muttered. "So? We've been slogging through the forest for 2 days. What do you want?" "A 6-lane highway. That'd be nice." "Yeah, until you raced out, screaming for help, and got mowed down by a logging truck." He walked into the middle and turned, waving his arms. "It's a road." I patted his back. "It's a lovely road. Now, which way do we go?" Corey looked one way, the brown ribbon extending into emptiness. He looked the other way, saw the same thing, and his shoulders slumped. Yes, finding a road did not mean finding civilization. Not right away. But at least it was a 2-lane road, which was better than stumbling over one of the many dirt tracks leading into the bush, and nowhere else. And, like I said, on Vancouver Island. If you want people, your best bet is always to head south. So that's what we did. The road wasn't as promising as we might have wanted. It was overgrown at the edges, and no hydro poles meant no nearby homes or cabins. But it smelled of diesel, and had tire tracks, so we knew it was still in use. At least no one was complaining anymore, and after a few minutes, the rain stopped. We'd gone about 5 kilometers when we rounded a bend to see a tiny roadside store with a gas bar. Yes, Corey said, pumping the air. We are now, officially, rescued. You think? Haley said. I'm not seeing any vehicles. Because it's out in the middle of freaking nowhere. They're probably lucky if they get 3 cars a day. No, I mean transportation for the person running the place. Corey peered at the empty lot surrounding the small building. Oh. The shack had one gas pump out front, and a diesel one around the side. The lack of a vehicle meant that unless there was a house nearby, no one was manning the place. But it should have a phone, I said. Or maps to show us where we are. Also, there must be cottages nearby if there's a gas bar. Ha! Corey said, spinning and pointing at Haley. Ha! He took off at a lope. We followed. Corey stopped a few feet from the door. Open weekends after Labor Day, he called. What's today? Not the weekend, I called back. Corey walked to the barred window, then turned to us. The window's filthy. I can't see anything. How about we try the door? Sam said. She was walking toward it when Haley grabbed her arm and pointed to a window sign warning that the place was armed with security alarms and cameras. Yeah, Corey said. Which will bring the local cops. If we're lucky. At this point, I'll take any ride out of here, I said. Even handcuffed in the back of a police cruiser. 19. The front door was unlocked. A bell jangled as Daniel and Corey walked in, Haley and Sam following. I took Kenji under a tree and told her to stay. As well trained as she was, I knew she was very hungry, and the smell of food might prove too much temptation. Hello. Corey was calling as I went inside. They'd stopped just inside the doorway and were looking around. It was your typical roadside store, crammed with non-perishable foods and items a caretaker might need badly enough to pay twice the normal price. The place smelled of must and mildew, and the layer of dust on the cans suggested they'd been there a while. The dirty floor had a path worn down the middle, meaning it wasn't deserted, just not very busy. Beside the door stood a cooler. It was unplugged and filled with pop cans and bottles. A handwritten sign advised those looking for milk to check aisle 2, for the powdered and canned variety. No beer. Corey said. What kind of place is this? The kind that knows better than to leave anything that'll make it a target for kids like you, I said. Corey grabbed a Coke. Hey. Haley said. If they aren't here to man the shop. Daniel reached into Corey's back pocket. He plucked out his wallet, took out a still damp 20 and put it on the counter. Corey grabbed for it, but Daniel gave a look that made Corey withdraw his hand. Fine, Corey said. Drinks and snacks on me, apparently. Chow down, guys. I'm a little more interested in finding a phone, I said. And figuring out if that open front door means someone's here. Nah, Corey said. They were so eager to get out of this dump that they forgot to lock up Sunday night. I walked behind the counter. Tucked beside the cash register was a folded newspaper. Beside it rested a paper cup of coffee. I touched the cup. Cold. Daniel said. Not hot. He reached over, pulled off the lid, and stuck his finger in the coffee. Warmer than room temperature, he said. He flipped over the paper to check the date. Today's. I don't see a bathroom, Corey said. Maybe he's outside, taking a leak. Kenji let out a sharp bark. Sounds like someone found him. He walked to the front door. When it didn't open, he put his shoulder into it and pushed. Try the handle, Haley said. There isn't one. Corey was right. It was the kind you pushed open from the inside, in case your arms were loaded with supplies. He hit it harder. It didn't budge. Daniel went over and they both heaved on it. The door groaned, but didn't open. Is anyone else getting concerned? Haley said. My pounding heart said yes, but I struggled to stay calm. Look for another exit. I walked toward the back. Corey? See if you can get a window open. How about a side door? Sam said. There's one right here, behind. She swore and jumped away from the window. It's a trap, she said, backing into the middle of the room. What? I walked behind the counter and found the door. Beside it was another filthy, barred window. Beyond that, I could see two human-size shapes. I cleared a spot on the glass. They might not be. I could make out Moreno and the woman I'd seen at the cabin. Behind them, a third person was trying to tie Kenji to a tree. She'd been muzzled and was stumbling a little, as if she'd been tranquilized, but she still fought against the rope. Moreno went to help. Kenji, I whispered. A loud buzzing sound made us all jump. I found a radio tucked under the counter. Hello. Maya. I should have known you'd be the one to pick up. My hand gripped the radio tighter as I recognized the voice. Who is this? I think you know. I moved to the front window. He was there. He lifted his free hand and smiled. I pulled back from the window. My name is Calvin Antone, he said. But what's important isn't who I am, but what I am, to you. Daniel moved closer. He could hear Antone. They all could. I thought of lifting the radio to my ear, but I knew that wouldn't help. I walked back to the counter, taking shelter behind it. What are you doing to my dog? We're taking good care of Kenji. We just didn't want her to get hurt trying to protect you. I twitched when he said her name. I didn't want him knowing that. He had no business with her or with any part of my life. Maya. What? He sighed. All right. We'll pretend you haven't already guessed. You're my daughter. Daniel's eyes widened. I looked away quickly. Did you hear me? Antone said. I didn't answer. I'm your dad, Maya. No, Rick Delaney is my dad. If you're saying you're my biological father, then fine. You can be that. But my dad is Rick Delaney. I'm sure you feel that way. No, it's a fact. He raised me and he's done a great job. I'm grateful to him and your adoptive mother. But you've reached the end of what they can do for you. You're part of a world they know nothing about. You understand that, don't you? Are you sure? I saw a subject list for Project Genesis. There's a Delaney on there. Elizabeth Delaney. A common enough surname. She's no relation to your adoptive parents. She was a half-demon. Was. She's dead, Maya. I felt a pang of grief for this girl I hadn't known, one who shared my name. He continued, the Edison Group killed her. That's what they do when things go wrong. In the first wave of any experiment, there are bound to be problems. But to take such extreme measures? That's unforgivable, Maya, and I won't let that happen to you. To any of you. He paused. Serena will be the only subject they kill in Project Phoenix. You have my word on that. The Edison Group didn't kill Serena, I said. If they wanted to, they'd have managed an accident a lot more believable than a champion swimmer drowning in a still lake. I don't know what happened in Buffalo, but it's different here. You guys are the only ones killing people. We have not. Rafe Martinez? Mayor Tilson. Unfortunate accidents. Caused by your team setting my forest on fire and kidnapping us. A pause. You're upset, Maya? Nicole told us you were close to Rafe. I'm very sorry, but we're here to help you now. I snorted. Right. That's why you locked us in here. I am here to help you. You're my child. No, I'm a teenage girl who happens to share your DNA, which you donated to an experiment. Is that what they told you? I was supposed to be your father, Maya. Apparently, your mother didn't see it that way. She took you and your brother, and I've been trying to get you back ever since. I flinched at the mention of my mother and twin brother, but pushed it aside. You don't work for the St. Clouds. They're the ones who promised me I could be a parent to my children, then robbed me of that right after I found you again. Yes, I found you. I'm the one who tracked you down in Oregon. Then this St. Cloud set up a phony job interview for Rick Delaney and decided you were too attached to your adoptive parents. So they moved your whole family to Salmon Creek, while keeping me on the line, promising I could be part of your life as soon as you were ready to know the truth. It took me a while, but I eventually figured out that was a lie. So I left. And took your story to a rival cabal. Sold us out. Told them where to find us. Silence. Then, you've figured out a lot, Maya. You're a very smart girl. A small laugh. I'd like to say that means you take after your father. No, I take after my parents. The Delaneys. I turned off the radio, and looked at the others, who were staring at me. There isn't another exit, is there? I said. Got a trapdoor over here. Corey waved us into the storage room. He pulled aside a filthy carpet. The trapdoor had been secured with a padlock, but he'd managed to pry the whole latch off. Does it lead anywhere? Daniel said. No. It's just a hole where they stash the beer and smokes. Big enough to hide in, though. Daniel shook his head and we walked back into the store, where the radio was buzzing again. If you don't answer that, he's going to come in here, Sam said. They all are. And if she does answer, they'll come in anyway, Daniel said. He was hoping she'd lead us out peacefully, but obviously that's not happening. I could fake it, I said. He'd know you were up to something. They talked Daniel, Corey, and Sam. I was having trouble concentrating. That radio didn't help. I went behind the counter to see if I could turn it off. As I picked it up, the newspaper fell to the floor. It flipped over and a headline caught my eye. Bodies of local teens recovered. Before I could take a better look, Daniel said something about causing a distraction. That's probably our only hope, I said as I straightened. The question is how to pull it off. He told us his idea. No, I said when he finished. Absolutely not. No one sacrifices themselves for this. We don't have time to argue, Daniel said. I'll be fine. But we won't, Sam said. We need you to get us out of here. It has to be someone else. And you're volunteering, right? Corey said. Sam opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Thought so. Corey turned to us. I'll go. Play the hero for a change. A forced smile. I hear chicks really go for that kind of thing. It should be me, I said. That guy. He wants me. I can distract. The crash of breaking glass had us all hitting the floor. Another crash as a second window smashed, glass tinkling. Shouts sounded outside. I looked up to see brown liquid running down the wall under the broken window. Some kind of solidified gas? Sedative? No, the window had been broken from the inside. A pop bottle lay on the sill, cola dripping down. That had been Daniel's plan. Smash the windows. Then, after our captors raced around the front, thinking we were trying to escape, he'd run through the side door and pretend to be the last one out, that the rest of us had already made it to the woods while, really, we were hiding inside. I leaped to my feet in time to see the side door swinging shut. Who? I began. Guys! Haley shouted outside. Wait up! Please, don't leave me here. Corey ran for the side door. Daniel caught him, hauling him back. Corey took a swing at him. Daniel ducked and wrenched Corey's arm behind his back. She did this for us, Daniel hissed. Don't blow it or she's given herself up for nothing. She'll be okay. We'll get her back. Corey hesitated. Then he dropped his chin, and let Daniel steer him toward the trapdoor. Sam and I followed. I won't say I didn't glance over at that side door. I won't say I didn't feel like a heartless, listening to them chase Haley, knowing they would catch her and hold her captive, like Nicole. But Daniel was right. She'd made this sacrifice for us, and she hadn't done it hoping we'd all be taken captive with her. 20. Daniel opened the trapdoor leading into the crawl space, then prodded us inside, whispering, "Move, move." Sam and I burrowed past the boxes. Corey was right behind us. Then the front door opened, bell jangling. Daniel jumped in, still holding the broken latch, and closed the trapdoor as one set of footsteps circled the shop. They stopped at the storage room door. Daniel tensed, ready to leap if the trapdoor opened. Clear! Moreno yelled. The steps crossed the store. The bell sounded again. Get in farther, Daniel whispered. We need to hide better. Didn't you hear him? Corey whispered. We're clear. They'll look outside some more. Then they'll come back in. The guys shifted the boxes, then we crawled in behind them. It was far from an ideal hiding spot. The crawl space wasn't even 3 feet deep. Dirt floor. I didn't want to think about what else was alive or dead down here. I twisted around and stretched out on my stomach. Sam huddled beside me, hugging her knees. The guys wiggled backward to us, as they moved the boxes and cases of beer, stacking them so we were hidden. How long should we wait? That was the question. Finally Sam asked it out loud. Until we think it's safe, I whispered. Then 20 minutes more, Daniel said. To be sure. When it finally seemed as if anyone searching for us had to be gone, I told Corey to check his watch. He was just doing that when I heard the sound of the front doorbells. Footsteps followed. Still only one set. Again they circled the shop. Definitely empty, Moreno said. They've got to be out there. A voice came through his radio. Then the doorbells jangled again. They're trying to use the dog. It was Antone. But she's not cooperating. She just lays down and growls at anyone who touches her. Good girl. Well, there's no one in here, Moreno said. What we really need is the Enright Witch's sensing spell and a werewolf tracker. Preaching to the choir, buddy. I've been hounding head office for 2 days now. They finally agreed to send the witch. No chance on a werewolf, though. The door to the back room opened. What have we here? Moreno murmured. A creak as he opened the trapdoor. Light filtered past the stacked boxes. Got something? Antone called. Nah, just storage for the booze. Well, check it out. Moreno chuckled. Happy to, boss. We held our breath as he pushed aside a beer case. I glanced over at Daniel. He had his eyes closed. Sweat shone on his forehead. His lips moved as he tried to mentally persuade Moreno that he'd looked hard enough. Let it work. Please let it work. Moreno hesitated. Then he backed out and yelled. Just boxes. You want a beer? I didn't hear what Antone said, but Moreno laughed and let the trapdoor fall shut. The bells over the door jangled a few minutes later. Daniel checked his watch. After 20 minutes, he helped me crawl forward, open the hatch, and listen. Nothing, I whispered. Give it another 5 minutes. We did. Then I insisted on going first to check. I crept to one of the broken front windows, listened hard, then peered out. The yard looked empty. I checked the side window. Same thing. I glanced back toward the storage room. Haley had made her sacrifice. Time for me to do the same. I went out the side door. Looked around. Circled the building. Nothing. I took a deep breath and walked to the road, shoulders up, gaze forward, tensing for the first shout. Or the first shot. When nothing happened, I looked around for Kenji. Even whistled softly. They'd taken her. I pushed down a stab of panic. She'd be fine. If that man wanted to prove he was on my side, he'd take good care of my dog. I looked both ways along the road. Empty. When I went back into the store, Daniel was out of the crawl space. All clear, I said as I walked in. You shouldn't have gone outside. Yes, I should have. Better one gets caught than all of us. That's how it has to be from now on. As long as one gets home, we all have a chance. He nodded. I gathered supplies from the store as he got the others. I took 2 incredibly overpriced backpacks, too. And, no, I didn't pay for them. Daniel didn't mention it, either. It was one thing to worry about that when we thought we were nearly to safety, but another when it looked like we still had a very long journey ahead of us. We hadn't talked about Haley yet, or what we planned to do. For now, we just needed to put some distance between us and the store, in case they returned. As we walked, I pulled out the newspaper I'd found. Getting caught up on current events? Sam asked. No, Corey said. She's doing her research for that essay we have due next week. You know Maya. Escaping a forest fire, helicopter crash, and crazed would-be kidnappers is no reason to ask for an extension. I'm sure she brought it for fire starter, guys. Daniel glanced over. Maya. My gaze was glued to the article as I read. When I tripped over a fallen branch, Daniel grabbed my arm and steered me to the side. Then he read the headline over my shoulder. Is that? I nodded. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I handed him the paper. He finished reading it. That's not, he murmured when he finished. How? Okay, what gives? Corey said. Personally, I wouldn't care if the US declared war on Canada. Doesn't seem relevant under the circumstances. This is relevant. I passed the paper to him and Sam. They read the first few lines. How can they? Sam began. That's not possible. Well, apparently, it is, I said. They lost contact with our helicopter shortly after takeoff. Our flight disappeared. Search crews found the wreck last night. South of Vancouver Island. Corey said. Okay, my sense of location can be a little screwy, but that's not where we went down. It was found by a private search party, I said. Hired by our parents' employer. Someone retrieved enough wreckage to move there and convince people that's where we went down. They recovered the bodies of the pilot and Mayor Tilson. I get that. But this. Sam jabbed her finger at the middle of the article. This is not possible. Wreckage and 2 corpses wasn't all they found. They'd recovered Kenji, too, apparently. That wasn't tough to fake. No one's going to test a dog. But the article said they'd also recovered DNA evidence that confirmed the death of the 7 teenagers on board. But how do you pull off something like that? Sam said. They have our DNA, I said. They must have made it seem like the crash was worse than it was, that there wasn't much left of us, Daniel said. Enough to provide DNA, but not enough to show our parents. Hold on, Corey said. Isn't there one massive flaw in this logic? The search team belonged to the St. Clouds. They have our DNA. They could convince our parents we were dead. But they aren't the ones we're running from, and they aren't the ones who found the wreck. They've cut a deal, I said. And cut us loose, Daniel murmured as he worked it out. There are other kids in this experiment. Probably our whole class. This Nast cabal discovered the experiment. This St. Clouds realized it. So they negotiated. I nodded. We die and the Nasts get to keep us, if they can find us. This St. Clouds get the rest of the kids. They already had one project blow up on them. They weren't about to lose another. So they negotiated. Corey said. Using us. Apparently that's all we are to them. Assets. Valuable ones, but not worth sacrificing the whole experiment for. So we can't go back to Salmon Creek, Sam said. If we do, they'll just turn us over. This St. Clouds will. Our parents won't. I looked around. Does anyone doubt that? Daniel said, carefully, I'm not sure my dad wouldn't let them have me. I don't believe that. I wasn't so sure, but I certainly wasn't saying so. But he won't be the one we'll approach. My parents would be best. I'm sure they knew nothing about this. Corey's mom is fine, too. And Mrs. Tilson isn't going to hand over Sam and Nicole to the people who killed her husband. Okay, so we still go back, Corey began. He stopped, wincing. Headache. I said. Yeah, just hold. He doubled over with a sharp intake of breath. I grasped his arm. Corey. Bad one, he panted. Okay, just. He let out a howl, his head dropping forward, his hands clutching it. Then he retched. Another heave, and a geyser of coke sprayed the bushes. I gripped his arm and tugged him until he was sitting, knees up, head between them, panting hard. Well, that's new, Corey muttered between gasps. And I don't think I like it. He winced again, face screwed up against the pain as he doubled over. Okay, I said. Just breathe and keep your eyes shut. The sunlight's probably making it worse. That would help, if I wasn't seeing light even with them shut. What? I'm getting flashes of a few panting breaths. Light. Color. Could use a soundtrack. You're seeing things. He shook his head. You get visions. I just get random another curse as the pain hit again. Flashes. Boring flashes. Daniel knelt and held out a bottle. I thought it was pop, then saw the label. Beer. I said. It helps. I knew his meds had dissolved, so I grabbed a few from the store. Corey took it and twisted off the cap. A few gulps. Then a deep breath as he relaxed. Another long drink, then a sidelong glance at me. Yes, I'm self-medicating with booze and I know that's not smart. I wouldn't do it if I had the meds. So beer helps. He shrugged. Not as good as the meds. I've still got a killer headache. But it doesn't feel like an ice pick driving into my skull. I looked over at Daniel. His eyes were dark with worry. If these weren't just migraines, if they were linked to the experiments, we had no idea how to handle them. No idea if they were a normal part of Corey getting his powers or a sign that something was wrong. Corey finished the bottle, then closed his eyes. The puking was new. And the pain was worse. The flashing lights are a recent symptom. He opened one eye. See, I said I get all the cool powers. Raging migraines cured by booze. I really will be that guy in a bar. The sound of a revving engine made us all look up. We'd been walking parallel to the road, but deep enough in the bush not to be spotted by anyone driving past. This noise sounded like an ATV. We hid, and it passed, went a little farther, then stopped. Moreno to base. Moreno to base. Someone answered. Moreno gave his coordinates, then said, still no sign of the Morris girl. She can't have run far, though. I'll keep looking. The ATV started up again. Haley escaped, Corey said. You heard that? I said. Yeah. We all did. Because we were supposed to, Daniel said. He was talking too loud. He even turned off the ATV so his voice would carry better. Because he's talking into a radio, Corey said. I bet if we keep going, we'll hear him do the same thing a little farther down. It's another trap. Corey looked at me. It sounds like it, I said. But if it's a good trap, then they really did let Haley go. She's out here as bait. So you think you can outsmart them and rescue her? Sam said. No, the smart thing to do is keep going. We argued about that, of course. Finally I said, I'm going to look for her. Just me. We can't, Daniel began. I've got the super-powered hearing, and I can move quietly. I need to try. 21. As I made my way through the forest, I'll admit I was also straining for a familiar bark or whine. I hadn't said a word about Kenji since leaving the store. How could I without making it sound like I put her on the same level as Haley? I love animals, but I know they aren't people. I can't value them the same way. But that didn't mean I wasn't sick at heart over Kenji. So as I walked through those woods, I was listening for her as much as I was listening for Haley. It was Haley I heard, though. Stomping on dead leaves. Muttering under her breath. Kicking aside fallen branches. Signs of a trap? Or just Haley, because she'd escaped and there was no one around to rescue her? A few days ago, I'd have gone with option 2. Now, though, I couldn't see Haley being so careless. I shimmied up a tree and waited for her to pass my way. But once she got close enough for me to see her through the branches, she sat down to rest. When she didn't come closer, I started crawling along a branch, planning to cross to the next tree. She started to look up, then caught herself, waited a moment, gave a loud sigh and slumped back against the trunk, giving her an excuse to look up. I waited until she looked up, then bent to catch her gaze. She held mine and mouthed trap, ending it with a yawn to fool anyone watching. I looked around. I might still be able to rescue her. Whoever was watching couldn't be too close. Haley rose a couple of inches from the ground, rubbed her butt, and scowled, as if she'd sat on a root or a rock. She got up and made some noise, kicking the ground then shaking a young oak, dead leaves rustling. In other words, assuring her captors that she was trying to attract our attention. Then she walked beneath my tree and sat down again. She picked up a stick and began idling poking around a patch of bare earth. Then she wrote, "Don't be stupid." She erased it, doodled a bit, then wrote, "I'm fine." I hesitated, but she was right. It was a trap and my chances of foiling it were slim to none. If I got caught, could I trust Daniel not to come after me? No. Could I trust Corey and Sam to make it to safety alone? No. Finally, I shimmied back along the branch to the trunk. As the needles rustled, Haley nodded. Then she wrote, "Thanks for trying," rubbed it smooth, got up, and walked away. Haley had sacrificed her freedom so we could escape. She'd refused to let me try to rescue her. If someone told me a week ago that Haley Morris would do this, I'd have said he was crazy. Or naive, because clearly she had an ulterior motive. Had she changed? I didn't think so. The answer was simpler: I'd been wrong about her. If I'd had a nemesis at school, Haley was it. Always insulting me. Always challenging me. Always doing her best to run me down, while I'd stood firm and refused to stoop to her level. Clearly, she was the aggressor and I was the victim. Only, well, it hadn't started out that way. Back in grade 5, I'd caught her cheating. I hadn't tattled. Maybe, in retrospect, that would have been better, because what I did instead was make it very clear that I wanted nothing more to do with her. When you accept a leadership role, you take on extra responsibility for your actions toward others. If you shun someone, the effect will trickle down through those who value your opinion. It wasn't as if Haley was an outcast. She had her friends, and she was the queen of the pretty girl clique. In a bigger school, that would have been enough. In Salmon Creek, it wasn't. I remembered what she said about flirting with Rafe to make Corey jealous. I remembered, too, what Rafe had said. That Corey might make out with Haley at parties, when he could claim he was just drunk and horny, but he'd never actually date her, because his friends, namely Daniel and me, didn't get along with her. I'd told myself Haley had been using Corey, too. He was her backup when no summer boys were around. Now, knowing she'd wanted to make him jealous, I realized I'd been wrong. I'd been wrong about a lot of things. Not just Haley. I'd misjudged Rafe. Nicole, too. I'd been so sure of my judgments that I'd never questioned them even when the evidence suggested I was wrong. I'd always thought of myself as an open-minded person. I had no patience with anyone who put down other kids because of their race or religion. But that's just one kind of open-mindedness. There's another kind, too, the kind that's willing to see people for who they really are and admit when you were wrong about them. That's the part I still need to work on. I climbed down the tree and started making my way back to the others. I had to put aside my worries for now. Our pursuers could be anywhere. I needed to be careful. When I was almost back, I heard branches snap as someone barreled through the woods. I ducked behind a fallen tree. A dark shape sprang, then stopped short, just out of sight. A whine. Kenji. I nudged aside branches until I could see her. She was still wearing the muzzle. A length of rope trailed behind her. I closed my eyes to listen for the sound of anyone else. More twigs snapped as Kenji caught my scent and raced around the fallen tree. I grabbed her and held her close, whispering, "Shhh," as I kept looking and listening. Kenji nudged me, as if to say, "That's no welcome." I pulled the rope in. The end wasn't broken, as I'd hoped, but as I ran it through my fingers I saw red smears. I took a better look. Blood. Someone had been holding her and Kenji had wrenched so hard she'd scraped the skin from his hands as she broke free. I hugged her. "They couldn't hold you, huh? Good girl." Maya. I stood. It was Sam, coming through the trees. Daniel and Corey appeared behind her. Seeing the dog beside me, Daniel grinned. "We got one escapee, at least," he said. "Only one," I said as I tugged off the muzzle. "I found Haley. She managed to communicate with me. It was a trap." There was no way. I took a deep breath. I wanted to try rescuing her anyway, but she said no. "Too bad dogs can't talk," Sam said. I glanced over at her. We're all feeling bad about Haley," Corey said. "Don't interrupt by wishing we could question the dog. That's not what I meant. Haley could tell you it was a trap." "He can't." "Kenji's a she," I said. "Whatever. My point is that your dog has conveniently escaped, just like Haley did. You don't think that's a trap? If it is, then we've already been caught." I looked around. "Hey! I don't see the guys with guns yet. Because they've put a tracking device on her. Or in her." I removed the rope. Then I took off her collar and handed it to Daniel to check while I ran my fingers over her, looking for tender spots. "It's clean," Daniel said, handing me back the collar. "If she was still wearing the muzzle and rope, then they wanted it to look like she really escaped," Sam said. "There's blood on the rope," I said. "That means she pulled free from whoever had her. Or they're very detail-oriented." "Oh, please," Corey said. "Seriously." I turned to Sam. "So what do you suggest? Tie her to a tree and keep going?" I stared at her. "I hope you're not serious," Daniel said. "How about we tie you to a tree?" Corey said. "It's a dog," Sam said. "I understand it's Maya's pet." "No, you don't understand," I said, barely able to get the words out. "I wouldn't tie any animal to a tree and leave it to die. Any animal. And certainly not my dog. She trusts me to look after her. I will not break that trust. I'm not saying we tie her and leave her for good. If she's tagged, they'll find her. If not, we can come back after. After she's died of dehydration? Or been eaten by the first hungry cougar or bear that comes along and finds dinner staked out for it." Sam backed up and crossed her arms. "This isn't about doing what we want. It's doing what we need to survive. You think you're the only one who's had to make hard choices. We just made a hard choice," Corey said. "We left Haley. There's a reason I don't have pets," Sam went on. "I found a kitten once. I took it from place to place as we ran, until the day we had to run without going back home. My parents said she'd find a way out of our apartment. I'm not sure of that. But there was nothing else to do. Hard life. Hard choices. My parents would have made sure the cat got out, called a neighbor from a pay phone or something. As I looked at Sam, though, I knew she wouldn't agree. She'd been raised to avoid risk at all costs. Sam has a point, I said. What? Corey said. No way. Daniel shot me a questioning look. Not questioning why I was going along with Sam, but wondering what alternative I had in mind, because he knew there was no way I'd leave Kenji behind. She could be tagged, I said. And as we agreed earlier, not all of us need to get to safety. That means not all of us need to stay with Kenji. I'll take her. You guys go another way. Once again, our great escape devolved into chaos, which could be summarized as, you can't do that. Yes, I can. I know you're upset. I'm not upset. We have a problem and I'm solving it. Expand. Mix. Repeat until one party wears down and surrenders. That party wasn't me. Actually, I was surprised by how quickly Daniel gave in. Well, quickly being relative. But he did fold fast enough for me to suspect he didn't plan to actually let me go off alone. So I kept my ears tuned for signs I was being followed. But I didn't hear any. He'd realized this was the best solution for all. I'd sent Daniel along the road, which seemed to be slowly veering inland. I stuck to a direct route south, through the woods. Soon I found an even narrower dirt road. It was dusk when I came across a couple of cottages. They were little more than shacks. Both uninhabited. One was completely empty. The other had furniture. So I broke in and, no, I didn't feel guilty about that. Couldn't. As I discovered, though, the only thing in that cabin was the furniture. No phone. No canned food. I had pop and energy bars from the store, though, so I decided to eat them at the table, which felt oddly comforting. I shared with Kenji, as I'd done with all my rations. By the time I finished eating, night had fallen. I considered spending it on the double bed. It was just a bare mattress, a stained and soiled one, but my muscles ached from sleeping on the cold ground, and I'd be better able to escape pursuers with a decent sleep. So I gingerly stretched out, using Kenji as a pillow. As everything got quiet, there was only one thing left to do. Think about what happened at the store today. Think about what that man said. Calvin Antone. My father. I hated the sound of that. Even biological father wasn't much better. As for bio-father, I'd never used the term, even in my mind. Probably because I never thought about the man who'd fathered me. I did think about the woman who'd given birth to me. I couldn't help it. She'd abandoned me. Now, I'd learned that I had a twin brother, and she'd kept him. It didn't matter if Rafe was right and she'd split us up for our own safety. She'd still chosen which child she wanted to keep, and there had to be a reason. Maybe I cried more, maybe I fussed more, maybe she decided she'd rather have a son, but some thought process must have gone into it. She'd chosen him and rejected me. I flipped onto my stomach and made a noise in my throat that sounded a lot like a growl. I didn't want to feel anything toward my biological parents, positive or negative. I remember once my mom showed me an online forum for adopted kids. If I wouldn't share my angst with her and I wouldn't share it with a counselor, maybe I'd be comfortable with this. What she couldn't seem to understand was that I had no angst. On those forums I saw kids about their adoptive parents and how much better their biological ones might have been, and I realized I had nothing in common with them. I was sure there were others like me who wouldn't trade their adoptive parents for anything, but those kids were doing fine, living their lives, just like me. They weren't complaining on internet forums. Now I had angst. Not only had my biological mother rejected me, but Rafe also said she had light hair and hazel eyes, even if she had to be at least part native because of the skinwalker blood. I'd grown up thinking I was 100% native, and finding out I wasn't threw me off balance. Then I'd met my biological father and he wasn't just the sperm donor I'd imagined. Apparently, he was the parent who hadn't rejected me. He said he'd been searching for me since I'd been born. Then he found me, and he'd been there ever since, somewhere, watching me grow up. Did I believe his story? I didn't want to. I wanted him to be lying, to be evil. Otherwise, he really had wanted me, and when we finally got a chance to meet, he was on the side of the people chasing me. He was my father, and he was my enemy. He claimed to care for me, and he killed the guy I cared about. He wanted to give me a better life, and he seemed on destroying the great one I already had. So yes, I had angst. More than angst, because when I thought about my biological parents, it forced me to think of the one thing that worried me more than anything else. The one thing I'd been struggling so hard not to think about. My mom and dad. They thought I was dead. Dead. What were they going through? How were they coping? Were they safe? Angst. Fear. Stark, gut-twisting terror. It didn't make for an easy sleep. I tried to clear my head, but when I did, I realized how horrible this cabin was. Even Kenji's dog smell wasn't enough to mask the stench of the mattress. There was no place better to sleep inside. I left the cabin and walked until I was so exhausted that I didn't care how hard the ground was. Then I curled up with my dog and fell asleep. 22. My dreams started innocently enough. I was at home, undressing for the night, then I collapsed into bed. I didn't stay there for long. The next thing I knew, I was in a medieval torture chamber, roped to the rack, being stretched until I screamed with. I wasn't sure how to describe it. Not pain. It was like stretching for a run, only it felt wrong, like I was overdoing it, my brain screeching for me to stop before I tore something, only I couldn't stop, because I wasn't in control. The ropes pulled tighter and tighter, until I was covered in sweat, gasping for breath. I didn't know what my tormentors wanted from me, but apparently screaming like a girl wasn't it, because they ramped it up to a form of torture seen only in sci-fi movies, injecting bugs under my skin. I didn't actually feel the injections. But I felt the bugs. They crawled all over my body and burrowed into my flesh. That led to more screaming. I lay there feeling my body being stretched beyond its limits, watching it writhe and contort as bugs skittered beneath my skin. And then, with no warning, the ropes were cut and the beetles vanished, and I was left panting with exertion and exhaustion, eyes squeezed shut until I dared to open them, and I was lying on the ground. I caught a glimpse of one of Kenji's paws and I remembered where I was. I blinked and yawned. Out of the corner of my eye I saw another of Kenji's paws jerk, and I glanced over to realize it wasn't hers. It was the huge tawny paw of a cougar. I leaped to my feet. Or I tried to, rolling awkwardly. I managed to get half up, then reached out to push to my feet and I screamed. Only it was no girly scream this time, it was a snarling yelp. I looked down again at my hands, stretched out before me. Not hands. Paws. Cougar paws. I gulped air. Even that didn't feel right, and when I closed my mouth, a fang caught my lip. I'd changed into a cougar. Transformed in my sleep. As I swung my head, I caught sight of Kenji. She was still fast asleep. I stared at her. If Kenji wasn't leaping up with a cougar standing 2 meters away, then there couldn't be a cougar standing 2 meters away. I was dreaming. Oh! I told myself I should be relieved, that I wasn't ready to deal with the shape-shifting, that I needed more information first, I needed to be prepared. Yet there was part of me that didn't want to be prepared. Didn't want to be so organized and informed all the time. The part that longed to just leap and experience. Yet the transformation couldn't be that easy, could it? For the body to turn from human to animal must involve pain. Vast amounts of real pain, not just discomfort. That was only logical. Logic. Why couldn't I have a little magic in my life, instead? I sighed. It came out as a feline chuff, jowls quivering. Oh, get over it already. You want magic, Maya? How about the ability to heal animals? The power to become one painful or not? That was magic. I stretched, cat-like, hind quarters up, front paws out. I stayed back from Kenji, though. Part of me still hoped I wasn't dreaming, that she was just soundly asleep from her long day of adventure. After everything I'd been through, I was entitled to enjoy my fantasy while it lasted. As I stretched, I flexed my paws and my claws shot out like switchblades. I relaxed and they retracted. In and out, in and out. I took a closer look at my paws. They were as big as splayed human hands, oversized for climbing. If I looked closely at my flanks, I could see very faint spots, all but disappeared. I pushed onto all fours and took a few steps. It wasn't as awkward as I'd feared. I knew how animals moved, and when I put that image into my brain, it was like an instruction set. My muscles obeyed and I walked. Forward. Back. I tripped and landed on my rump. Okay, that explained why animals usually turn around instead of switching into reverse. Backing up on 2 legs is a lot easier than on 4. So what else was different? Everything I saw, for starters. The world came in shades of grey, like a high-quality black and white movie. My night vision seemed sharper, as did my hearing. The dark clearing where we'd fallen asleep looked twilit, and I could pick up the scuffle of a distant animal. The most noticeable difference was the overwhelming number of smells. Musk and rot and a sharp, clean scent that I somehow recognized as water. I swallowed. Water. I followed the scent until I found a stream, barely a trickle. I sat on my haunches and reached out a paw, ready to scoop some up to drink before realizing that really wasn't going to work. I bent, stuck out my tongue, and licked the water. I knew I was supposed to lap, not lick, but that's not easy when you aren't accustomed to it. After slopping around and soaking my face, I managed to get a few mouthfuls. When I had enough, I twisted to go and felt a weird ping on my cheek. It was like I'd brushed against something, but a more intense sensation. And my face was inches from the ferns bending over the stream. I tried again. Another ping, and I realized what it was. Whiskers. They were warning me I was close to hitting something. Like the backup sensors on my grandmother's car. As I turned around, I felt another brushing sensation, this one not nearly as intense but even odder. My tail. It was off to the side and I couldn't really get a good look at it. So how could I move? My tail swung. Okay, that was easy. I took a closer look. It was thick and over half the length of my body. When I thought of moving it, it moved. Very convenient. I crept forward, sniffing and listening and, occasionally, tasting. When I caught the faint smell of raw meat, my stomach rumbled. That part, I ignored. Definitely not something I cared to explore, and the mingled musk of a weasel or marten told me I'd be stealing dinner from someone else if I did. The next scent on the breeze was also from a living being. And this one brought me to a skidding stop, paws outstretched. I lifted my head, nose twitching as I found the smell again, to be sure I wasn't mistaken. Human. Daniel and the others? My heart beat faster, tail swinging. Another sniff. No, these were scents I didn't recognize. Not consciously, at least. But as I stood there, nose raised to the wind, images flashed in my mind and told me I did know these people. I just hadn't realized I'd stored the scents. Moreno. Antone. The woman. And the faint smell of a campfire. As I sniffed the air, I started to seriously consider the possibility this was real. I'd dreamed of undressing. I must have done that, in my sleep, like I'd walked in my sleep 2 nights ago. As for the transformation, I'd seen Annie do it and it had seemed relatively painless. And why hadn't Kenji woken? Because I'd moved away from her before I shape-shifted. She was too tired to hear me get up and I probably smelled the same as I always did. No cause for alarm. This was real. I'd shape-shifted. I was a cougar. And Antone, Moreno, and the woman were close by. Was Sam right, after all? Had they tagged Kenji and were closing in? Time to check this out, while I still wore my handy disguise. By the time I got to the camp, I knew they weren't tracking my dog. If they had been, they wouldn't be staying so far away. I'd traveled at least a couple of kilometers to find them. When I finally made it, I found 2 canvas tents and a pickup. From the looks of the small fire, they'd only recently pitched camp for the night. Moreno, Antone, and the woman sat around the blaze. Moreno and the woman were drinking beer. Antone had a bottle of water beside him, and was crouched by the fire, poking a stick in. I caught the smell of roasting sausage. He pulled it out and put it into bun, then set the stick aside. Not going to make ours? Moreno said. I'm sure you can manage. I burn everything. My people didn't cook over fire. All people cooked over fire at some point, Antone said. You know what I mean. Your family. My family lived in a suburb of Phoenix. I learned campfire cooking in Scouts, like most boys in America. Touchy, touchy, Moreno said. I was just being an ass, the woman said. Moreno muttered something, crushed his beer can, and threw it into the forest. The woman leaned over, took the stick, and started preparing a sausage. Antone walked into the forest, retrieved the can, and tossed it into the trash. Earth Mother be angry, Antone said as he came back to the fire. Send big thundercloud. Moreno made a face at him. As Antone sat again, I thought of what he'd said earlier, about losing my twin brother and me. Hunting for us. Finding me. Being strung along by promises from the Saint Clouds. Did I understand how he felt? I guess so. But I was only his child in blood. I'd been raised by others, and to think he could just take me away from them then or now was all kinds of wrong. It didn't matter if he'd been given a raw deal. It didn't matter that as I watched him I saw hints of someone I might have liked. He was trying to take me captive and separate me from my family while endangering my friends along the way. He was the enemy. He had to be. When Moreno went for a second beer, Antone said, Enough. I don't mind you guys having one drink, but there's a reason I'm drinking water. We need to be alert here. Against what? Moreno said. Killer bunnies. Don't dignify that with a response, Cal, the woman said. A cough sounded from one of the tents, and they all glanced over. Penny, go see if she wants another sausage, Antone said. I'd like to see her eating more. I have a Snickers bar in my bag, the woman Penny said. I'll take her that. Kids always like candy. Not sure that applies to teenage girls, but you can give it a shot. Teenage girls? Haley? I inhaled. This close to the fire, though, all I could smell was smoke. I strained to see inside the tent as Penny pulled back the flap, but she didn't open it far enough. I slid backward until it seemed safe to turn around. Then I circled the camp. I eyed a massive tree with branches stretching close to the tents. My claws extended and retracted, as if urging me to climb it. Tempting. The tents were in the middle of a large clearing, meaning there was no way I could get close from ground level. I saw a flap tied open on the tent roof. A vent that I could probably see down through. Up it was then. I'll say this much for cat form. It made shimmying up a long evergreen trunk so much easier. I'd seen Marv, our local cougar, do it by taking a run at the tree and landing 10 feet up it, but I wasn't quite ready for such athletics yet. So I started at the bottom, reached up, and unsheathed my claws. 4 massive paws equipped with climbing spikes. I was up the tree in no time. Getting out on the branch was a little tougher. I had to creep along while using my tail for balance. It was the tail part that threw me. I was sure I'd get the hang of it, but for now, I was just glad I had 16 claws digging into the tree to keep me from sliding off every time I wobbled. Halfway along the branch I smelled who was in that tent. And when I did, a tiny growl rumbled up. Nicole. Penny emerged. No to the sausage and no to the candy bar. I'd say she's understandably upset, but it seems more like a hissy fit. She didn't want to come back out here. She was quite comfy in Vancouver, with her soft bed, hot baths, and room service. All the more incentive for her to lure her friends out so she can get back there, Antone said. Haley obviously wasn't going to do it. They talked for another minute, enough for me to confirm what had happened. Kenji I had escaped and Haley hadn't done her job, so they'd swapped her out for Nicole. As I thought of Nicole, my ears flattened and my chest vibrated with another growl. I swallowed it. Was Nicole really responsible for Serena's death? What if Sam was mistaken? Wasn't that exactly the sort of thinking I'd berated myself for earlier, jumping to conclusions? I continued creeping along the branch until I could look down through the mesh skylight and see her, sitting on a sleeping bag. She wasn't bound, there was no way out except past her captors. A lantern provided illumination and a pile of magazines provided entertainment. She was reading one, leafing through the glossy pages. I told myself that was her way of dealing with stress, but still? Reading fashion tips? If it was me, I'd be plotting my escape, no matter how unlikely it seemed, just to feel that I was taking control of my fate. I shimmied a little closer and the branch creaked. Nicole looked up. She saw me, and her mouth opened to let out a shriek. I froze. I was stuck out on a branch, with no easy way to back up and escape. She didn't scream, though. For a minute, we just stared at each other. Then she lifted the lantern and squinted, her gaze sliding along my side. Maya, she whispered. I followed her gaze to my flank. There was my birthmark, black fur forming a paw print. It is you, isn't it? She stood. They told me what you are. She smiled up at me and I saw the same old Nicole, sweet and shy, yet all I could think was, you killed Serena. I looked into her eyes and it wiped away that last piece of doubt. You came to rescue me, she said, keeping her voice so low I could barely hear it. When I just stared at her, she said it again. You are here to rescue me, right? I thought about how easy it would be to drop from my perch, slash through that tent, and take her down. I imagined my fangs clamped around her throat, and felt a kernel of horror in my gut, but it was only a kernel. "Stop that," she hissed, yanking her gaze away. "Go get the others. You outnumber these guys. Together you can save me." I didn't move. She looked at me again, and the sweet and shy Nicole disappeared. Her eyes blazed. "The others aren't here, are they?" she said. "You have no intention of rescuing me. Why would you? I'm competition for your precious Daniel. You don't want him, but you don't want anyone else to have him either. You're a selfish, Maya Delaney. A slut, too, fooling around with every guy in sight, right under his nose." As Nicole raged, the hair on my neck prickled, because in her eyes, I saw madness. Obsession and madness. "Everything comes so easy for you, doesn't it, Maya? School, boys, friends, sports. Even your precious animals. You can't just take care of them like any normal person. You have to be some kind of animal whisperer. Magical healer. So special. Like Serena, captain of the swim team and the best singer on the freaking island, and how much does she practice? Sings in the shower. Paddles around the lake. Do you know how hard I work? It's never enough. You two get the trophies and the solos and the as and the boys. You're crazy, I thought. Did they do this to you with their experiments? Or is this just you?" I started inching back. "You're just going to leave me here," she said. "Well, you know what, Maya? I could use a little company." She screamed, a long drawn-out shriek of feigned terror. 23. Moreno was the first to see me, and he let out a curse as loud as Nicole's shriek. He pulled a gun from his hip. An automatic pistol. Antone knocked it from his hand and pointed his flashlight at my flank. "It's Maya," he said. He started toward me. I was inching back, the branch too thin for me to turn around. "It could be Annie," Penny whispered, her gaze fixed on me. "Come looking for her brother." Antone shook his head. "That's Maya." He met my gaze. "I know it is." He kept walking until he was directly under my branch. "This is your first time, isn't it?" he said, his voice soft. "You're scared and you're confused." I let out a snarl that reverberated through the quiet forest. Antone chuckled. "Or maybe not. I should have guessed you'd hit the ground running." He smiled. "Or hit the trees climbing. But you're trapped now. I know that's not fair. You came to rescue your friend and..." "She didn't come to rescue me," Nicole spat as she stormed out of the tent. "She came to taunt me. She's a spoiled brat." "Get her out of here," Antone said, eyes never leaving mine. "Maya, you know you're trapped, and I'm sure you want to put up a fight, but that's not going to help anyone." I hunkered down, measuring the distance between us. "Cal," Penny said. "Back away. She's getting ready." "She won't." His gaze fixed on mine. "She might want to, but she won't." I dug my claws deeper into the branch, testing my purchase. My tail rose and flicked from side to side as I adjusted my balance. I crouched. An easy leap. He wouldn't get out of the way. He was too confident that I wouldn't hurt him. My hindquarters twitched. My rear legs tensed. I sheathed my front claws. I let out one last snarl. Then I leaped. He realized then that he was wrong. That I felt no tie to him. Felt no sympathy for him. That I would rip his throat out if that protected my friends. At the last second, I twisted. Penny fired the tranquilizer gun, and I felt the darts whiz past. I heard Antone's shout. Heard Penny curse as she realized she'd missed. Heard Nicole shout for them to shoot me before I killed them all. I wasn't about to kill anyone. That wouldn't save me. Wouldn't save the others. I didn't know if I could have or not. Only that it would be a life wasted, so the point was moot. When I twisted, I flung myself at the tent roof. I hit it and the tent went down. I heard them swearing, then their quarry was in the midst of a mass of billowing canvas, impossible to shoot. Before the tent could collapse completely, I grabbed a mouthful of canvas and ran into the forest, wrenching it along with me. It was too heavy to drag very far, but I didn't need it to go far, just to the first trees where it caught, wedged between them like a sail. I let go and tore off into the forest. Behind me, I heard an ATV roar to life. But I already had a huge lead. Cougars are decent sprinters, but they aren't long-distance runners. Soon I was exhausted and had to slow to a steady lope. By then, though, my pursuers were long gone, having headed north the way I started running while I'd looped south. I found Kenji easily, as if I could instinctively retrace my steps. When I got back to the clearing, I collapsed into sleep. I dreamed of the rack and the bugs again. Then I dreamed of Serena at the lake. Only this time, I was right beside her, paddling around, laughing and goofing off. Then I saw Nicole, at the side, almost hidden in the bushes overhanging the lake. She slipped into the water. I grabbed Serena's arm and started dragging her toward shore. "We have to get out." "Oh, no." Her hand wrapped around my wrist. "I just got you in." She tugged me out farther, then flipped onto her back and floated. Beneath the crystal clear water, I could see Nicole swimming, coming closer with each stroke. "It's Nicole," I said, pointing. Serena grinned. "Good. I invited her, but you know how she is. All work and no play. I don't see why she has to practice so much." "I don't." Nicole grabbed Serena by the leg. She let out a giggling shriek as she was pulled under. I dove and managed to grab her under the arms and pull her up. She came up sputtering and scowling. "What was that for?" she said, pushing wet hair from her face. "It's Nicole," I said, grabbing her arm again. "She's trying to drown you." Serena laughed. "Nicole wouldn't hurt me. She's my friend. She's just..." She went under again as Nicole dragged her down. I swam after them, but this time they were moving too fast. I could see Serena's face. Her eyes glittering as she tried not to laugh. Then, as she went deeper, worry crept in, and she reached for me, pulling against Nicole. She started to kick, mouth opening in a scream. They hit the bottom, and a cloud of dirt billowed up. I hit something, too, an invisible barrier. I clawed at it, screaming as Serena fought and writhed and kicked at Nicole. Then she tried to get to me, her fingers stretching up, higher and higher, and then, an inch away, they stopped. I battered at the invisible barrier. Nicole crouched there, holding Serena down. She looked at me and she smiled. I shot up from sleep, a scream still in my throat. Hands gripped my wrists. "Maya! It's me! Daniel!" Dragging me to shore. Not knowing that Serena was out there, drowning. "Serena!" I shouted. "Let me go and get her! Please get her!" Arms went around me. "She's gone, Maya." "No, she's..." I looked over his shoulder as he hugged me and I saw the forest. Heard Kenji whimper. Felt her tongue lick the tears from my cheek and thought, this isn't right. I backed away and took a better look around. No lake. Just a grey forest, sun rising to the east. I was dreaming, I said. Again. Can't say I blame you. Daniel eased back as I moved away to sit on the ground. Been having a few anxiety dreams myself. I looked at him and the events of the last day slowly returned. You shouldn't be here, I said. I'm still dreaming, aren't I? That depends. Am I better looking? I gave a soft laugh and shook my head. Do I at least smell better than I did yesterday? No. Sorry. I rubbed my eyes and yawned. Where are the others? Sleeping a couple 100 meters that way. He pointed. I figured that was far enough from you. I thought I told you we should separate. And you expected me to listen? The point was that we shouldn't be close enough together that the bad guys could swoop in and nab us all. Gotta admit, though, when you looked like you were going to sleep in that cabin, even Sam was tempted to join you. We would have, too, if you hadn't come out and set off again. I stretched. Well, Kenji I isn't tagged. I stopped and blinked harder, then murmured. Or was that a dream? What? I shape-shifted in my sleep. But if you were nearby all night and I'm dressed. Your t-shirt's on backward. Your socks and shoes are off. Your jeans aren't zipped. And I'm pretty sure those aren't Kenji's. He pointed to 2 large cougar tracks in a patch of dew-damp earth. But how? I stayed downwind so Kenji couldn't smell us. She probably didn't wake because she was exhausted. As for the clothes, I guess you do more than shape-shift in your sleep. Which is convenient. So I really did. I looked at the tracks again. Wow. And you're going to tell me all about it, right? I zipped my jeans and pulled on my discarded socks and shoes. Later. Right now, I need to tell you what I heard. I gave him the amended version. Very amended, because I couldn't tell him about seeing Nicole or he might want to return for her. I was still determined that he'd never find out that Nicole went after Serena. And he'd certainly never find out why. No one deserves that kind of burden. Especially Daniel. I told him I'd found the camp and overheard that Kenji had escaped and Haley had failed to trap us, so they'd shipped her off and were looking for other ways to find us. That was all he needed to know for now. It was still morning when we found a paved road. Actual vehicles traveling that road would be even better, but apparently, too much to hope for. We walked about 15 minutes before we heard an oncoming car. Corey stepped into the middle of the road. A pickup whipped around the curve. Corey waved his arms. The guy in the pickup laid on his horn and veered past, sending Corey stumbling as his bad knee gave way. Daniel and I helped him up. Ow! He said. There'd have been a bigger ow if he hadn't swerved, I said. That would not look good on your obituary. Survived a helicopter crash, armed kidnappers, and 3 days in the woods, only to get mowed down by a passing redneck. From now on, we'll flag down cars from the shoulder. Daniel looked at Corey, who was rubbing his sore butt. Or maybe the ditch. The next vehicle didn't come for a long time. It was a car full of guys not much older than us. Quick, girls, Corey said. Give them some incentive. Take off your— he glanced at Sam. Maya, take off your shirt. Sam clubbed him in the arm, hard enough to make him yelp. We waved and yelled. They waved back and kept going. Eventually someone's going to pick us up, I said. We've spent 3 days hiking through the forest, and we look like it. Someone's going to stop. Finally, we found someone who had stopped. It wasn't for us, but only because he hadn't made it that far. We rounded a bend to see a grey-haired guy getting out of his van, having pulled to the side. He was still about 50 meters away. We picked up speed and yelled, but he was already heading into the woods. "Must have a shy bladder," Corey said. True. With these back roads, most guys settled for walking around their vehicle for privacy. Some didn't even do that. "He left the van running," Corey said. "No," Daniel said. "Yes, we shouldn't take his ride," Corey said. "But we're exhausted, out of food, nearly out of water, and that van is our best chance. Do you really want to just trust he'll help us?" "No, I want to make sure he will. I'll try using my powers. If that fails, we'll have to resort to other incentives." Daniel flexed his arms. "We can't take his ride, though. We don't know how far he might need to walk to the nearest town." "You two hang back," he said to Corey and Sam. "Maya, make Kenji I stay with them." "Excuse me," Corey said. "Sam and I aren't going to scare. 4 teenagers and a dog will scare any old guy," Daniel said. "So will 2 guys." "So will," he glanced at Sam. "Thanks," she said. "You know what I mean. Maya's friendly. And she can keep her cool." "I'm not sure that's any less insulting," Sam muttered. "But she waved us ahead." Corey took Kenji I's collar and led her into the ditch, where they hid behind bushes. "Hello," I called as we approached, far enough away that I hoped I wouldn't startle the man. He still came stumbling out, zipping up his pants. "I'm sorry," I said. "But we're from Nanaimo. We were on a school hike yesterday and we got lost. I'm sure they're looking for us. It was probably in the paper." "Don't read the paper." The man inched toward his vehicle, gaze locked on Daniel. "You kids stay away from my van. We're not going to steal it, sir." Daniel moved forward carefully, his voice taking on his persuasive tone. "We just need help. Like my friends said. Town's that way." He pointed south. "About 20 kilometers. Which is a very long hike, sir." Daniel met the old man's gaze as he kept walking forward. "We're really tired and we don't have any food or water. If we could just ride in the back." The man pulled a switchblade from his pocket. "Don't come any closer, boy. Not you either, girlie. I got robbed on this road once. Not going to happen again." "Please, sir," Daniel said. "We aren't." The man darted to the driver's side and leaped in as Daniel raced around the van. The man slammed it into gear. The van lurched forward. I grabbed Daniel and yanked him out of the way as the van swerved onto the road. Corey came out from behind the bushes as we walked back. "Next time, we consider my plan." "I think so," Daniel mumbled. "At least he told us there's a town along this road," I said. "Same way we're heading." "How far?" Corey asked. "He didn't say," I lied. "But it can't be too far." Daniel glanced at me, then nodded. 24. 20 kilometers is indeed too far when you're ready to drop already. "I should have listened to Corey," Daniel said. "I was so sure I could convince that guy. It's worked until now." "Not on Moreno," I said. "Sure it did. At the store, yes, but we couldn't get him talking earlier. Obviously it's not going to be a foolproof power or you'd have the ability to make anyone do anything. My guess is that they have to want to already. The woman at the tattoo studio wanted to get rid of us. Moreno wanted to skip searching a filthy crawl space. That old guy really didn't want to help us. In other words, don't rely on special powers. Same way I'm not going to let you run in front of a moving van even if I have healing abilities. Okay, so. Corey, who'd been walking ahead with Sam, let out a whistle. He gestured to a tractor trailer, pulling out of what looked like a parking lot. We jogged up to Corey and Sam. Please don't be closed for the season, Corey murmured as we picked up speed. Please don't be staffed by witches and demons, lying in wait for us. Please, 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 just give us a break. As we approached, we saw the sign. Redwood Motel and Restaurant. There were 3 vehicles in the lot, 2 cars off to the far side and a pickup with a topper in front of the restaurant doors. This is good, Corey said. Tell me this is good. People. Phones. Food. I grinned over at him. Yep, this is good. Daniel caught Corey's arm. We should let the girls handle this. Hey. Corey said. We just need to make a phone call, right? I'll give them my other 20 to cover it. I think we should hang back. We're in rough shape. That guy with the van was worried about me, not Maya. Corey sighed. Fine. For once, you've earned the right to paranoia. Go get 'em, girls. He passed me the 20. Just in case. I told Sam we should go through the side door and slip into the bathroom to clean up before we talked to anyone. The side door actually led into the motel office, but no one was at the desk. A sign referred customers to the restaurant for service. A glass door separated the two. Through it, I could see the bathrooms at the rear. I was waiting for the server, a blonde woman about my mom's age, to turn her back when I caught sight of a newspaper on the motel office counter. One look at the lower headline and I realized I could use it, which meant cleaning up wasn't the right move. I picked up the newspaper and walked into the restaurant. The server looked up, as did the sole patron, a guy about 35. Can I help you? The server said, gaze traveling over our dirty clothes. I hope so. I set the paper on the table she was resetting and pointed to the headline, Missing Island Teens Dead. That's us. The woman glanced at the paper, then at us. Her lips tightened. That isn't funny, girls. I'm not joking. Those poor kids are dead and... No, they're not. Someone made a mistake. I'm Maya Delaney. This is Samantha Russo. Our helicopter went down off the northeastern coast. We've been walking through the woods for 3 days. I gestured at my clothes. As you can see. You can't be. That's our names right there, I said, pointing at the list in the paper. Prove it. Our helicopter crashed in the ocean, lady, Sam said. She pulled sodden rectangles from her pocket and dropped them on the table. That's my ID. I opened the paper to an inner page where the piece continued. There were photos of 2 missing kids. Rafe and Nicole. How did they get Rafe's picture? Sam muttered. Those aren't us, I said. Convenient, the server muttered. It wasn't convenient. It was intentional. Submit photos of the kids they knew weren't wandering around the forest. There was a class picture at the bottom of the article. It was tiny and blurred, although my copy at home was perfect. We're in this one. I pointed to the class shot. That's me, and that's Sam over there. I think that's Brian, Sam said. Is it? I squinted. Maybe. It was impossible to tell, really. I wouldn't even be sure which one was me if I didn't recognize my tie-dyed shirt. Okay, I said. Our pictures might not be recognizable, but come on. Why would we lie about it? Same reason my own kids lie, the server said. To get attention. Seriously? Sam said. We're going to hatch this elaborate scheme, and launch it in your crappy little. I stepped on Sam's foot. We're dirty, I said. We're exhausted. Look outside. We didn't come in a car. So how did we get here? Where did we come from? Nanaimo, I'll bet. She said it the same way people in Nanaimo would say Vancouver, with a sneer that said nothing good came from the big city. Maybe Victoria. She peered at us. Probably Victoria. Only rich kids can afford to mess up nice clothes like that. Private school, I'll bet. You talk like you come from a private school. We do. I jabbed my finger at the paper. Salmon Creek School. Privately owned by the St. Cloud Corporation. Our teacher's name is Mrs. Morris. She's the mother of Haley, one of the girls they said died. There are 13 kids in our class, which covers grades 11 and 12. We're in 11. Look, do you have a computer? I can show you Maya Delaney's Facebook page. Which has my photo on it. I'll have to use my password to access it because all my details are set to private. That should prove it's mine. You kids these days are too smart for your own good, the server said. I'm sure you've got Facebook pages set up for this scheme. What scheme? Sam said, her voice rising. What possible motivation could we have to do this? Attention. The server crossed her arms. I bet you've got friends out there taping us. Make fun of the locals. Post the videos on Youtunes. YouTube, Sam muttered. See. She shook her head. Spoiled brats. You aren't even thinking about these poor kids and how their parents must be feeling. Yes. I met her gaze. I am thinking about how my parents are feeling. They think they just lost their only child. I need them to know that I'm alive. I glanced at the lone customer. He looked away quickly and focused on his lunch. I turned back to the server. If I can just use your phone. Why? To call your friends to come and get you? Better get walking, girl. It's a long way to town. She kicked us out after that. There was nothing we could do, nothing we could say. She knew the story, those kids had died in a crash on the other end of the island. DNA said it was the missing kids, and everyone who watched CSI knew DNA never lied. It's official, Sam said as we walked out. We're screwed. The universe is conspiring to destroy us. If it was, I think it could have managed that a few times by now. Ah, but that's the trick. You cheat death, it keeps trying. Didn't you see that movie? All of them, actually. Serena loved a brief pause. She loved horror movies. Did she? I'd have thought her more the romance type. Girls? I glanced back to see the man from the restaurant. I slowed to let him catch up. He was a little older than I'd first thought. Maybe 40. Sandy brown hair. Short beard. Golf shirt. Trousers. Loafers. He looked like a schoolteacher. I'm sorry about what happened in there, he said. I don't know anything about that helicopter crash. I'm on vacation with my family, and haven't been reading the papers. But I've got a girl about your age, and I can't imagine her going to all this trouble to pull a prank. Even if she did, he shrugged. Kids do silly things sometimes. No excuse to strand them in the middle of a forest. I noticed Daniel and Corey circling around by the trees and subtly motioned for them to wait. Thanks, I said. We really just need to call our parents. If I could borrow your cell phone, that would be great. I pulled out the 20. I know it might be an expensive call, but this should cover it. No, no. He waved the money away. You make that call and you take as long as you like. He reached into his pocket and came out empty. Hey! My phone must have fallen out in the truck. Just a section. He walked to the pickup. We waited. A couple of minutes later, he came back shaking his head. Phone not there. I called. No. It's the damnedest thing because my wife made sure I brought it. I hope it didn't fall out when I was getting gas. Can you do us a favor then? I said. Talk to the server and get her to let us use hers? I can pay, like I said. He shook his head. I already tried putting in a good word for you. She's having none of it. I'll have to give you girls a lift into town. On Vancouver Island, hitchhiking is considered a perfectly feasible way to travel, prohibited only on the highway, where you could get hit. In Salmon Creek, though, we got stranger danger classes from kindergarten. Ours were probably a little different from most. We were taught that anyone in Salmon Creek could be trusted, it was the rest of the world we needed to watch out for. Some kids did start hitching rides into town when they hit that awkward old enough to hang out in Nanaimo but not old enough to drive there stage. If I'd tried it, I'm not sure who would have killed me first, my parents or Daniel. I didn't trust this guy. I didn't like his story about the cell phone. I didn't like his excuse for not helping us with the server. Even if I totally believed him, I wouldn't have gotten in the truck. So why was I considering it? Because he had a truck. And we needed it, and if he did turn out to be a creep, even Daniel wouldn't argue about abandoning him by the roadside. I'm not sure. Can we? I glanced at Sam. Can I talk to you? I pulled Sam aside and told her what I had in mind. As I did, I motioned for Daniel and Corey to move through the woods, closer to us. Then we went back to the man. Okay, I said. We'd really appreciate a lift. My friend here has to, go to the bathroom before we leave. She's been holding it a long time. I know they won't let her use the one inside, so she's going to use the woods. Sam had already taken off, loping toward where Daniel and Corey were hiding with Kenji. There, she'd tell them the plan. We'd get into the truck, and make sure the guy paused at the exit, so they could jump into the back. While Sam was gone, I asked the man about his vacation, to keep him occupied. Sam talked to the guys, then gave them time to make their way over near the exit. When she came back, we climbed into the truck. I sat between the guy and Sam. As I settled in, I reached for the radio, then said, "Is this okay?" He smiled. "Sure. You might not like my station, but you can change it." I left it on his country music and cranked it up loud enough to hide any noise the guys and Kenji were about to make. The pickup pulled to the roadway. There was a stop sign, but around here, most people just roll up, glance around, and pull out, and that's exactly what he was going to do until I said, "Sam. Your ID. Do you have it?" He stopped. She checked her pockets and I checked mine, bouncing in our seats, hoping to cover any other movement as the guys got in the truck bed. "I think you left it inside," the man said. "It wouldn't be any good anyway." "I guess you're right." Sam sighed, as if resigned to the loss. He pulled out onto the road and turned north. Isn't the town south?" I said. "Southwest, actually. This is quicker." He pulled onto the first side road, little more than a rutted trail. "Are you sure you should take this?" I said. Your truck looks really new. He laughed. That's what trucks are for, hon. No sense buying a 4x4 if you don't plan to go off-road. Just hold tight. We'll be there before you know it. He had no idea where this road led. That was obvious as he drove along, leaning forward, straining to see. Was he looking for a place to pull over? I swallowed a bubble of panic. I knew this might be what he had in mind. The guys were in the back. Everything was okay. He turned off onto another path. I don't think this is a road, I said. Sure it is. It comes out it. The truck lurched a couple of times, as he surreptitiously tapped the brakes. Oh, he said. Come on. Please don't. A sudden stop had us all hitting our seat belts. What happened? I said. He shook his head and cranked the engine, making it whine. He pretended to hit the gas, muttering, "Come on, come on." Then he swore when nothing happened. Can you fix it? Sam asked. I can try. Got my tools in the back. Great, we said in unison. He got out. We did the same. I stood beside Sam and she grinned at me. The man reached for the back door on the truck topper. As I braced for the cry of surprise, I couldn't help grinning myself. We were about to have transportation. And this time, I wouldn't feel bad about taking it. Only there was no cry of surprise. No scrabbling of claws. No shout from Daniel or Corey. The back was empty. The guys hadn't made it in. Run! I whispered. I dove into the forest. That was instinct for me. Avoid open areas, take refuge in dense woods. I heard Sam's running feet. But there was no crashing of undergrowth behind me. I looked over my shoulder to see her racing along the open trail. A shot fired. A rifle shot. Grow up in the forest, and you recognize that sound the way an inner-city kid recognizes pistol fire. Stop or I shoot again, the man said. His voice had changed. Not calm and jocular now. I looked around frantically. I said stop. A second shot. A yelp. Sam dropped out of sight. Oh God, he'd shot Sam. 20. I fought the urge to run to Sam and instead picked my way through the trees, heading in her direction. Don't worry, I heard the man say to Sam. I just winged you. Now you wait right there while I go find that pretty little Indian friend of yours. He jogged down the trail, passing Sam where she lay. Good. Keep going. Please keep going. I crept through the trees until I was alongside Sam. I could still see the man. He stood a few meters away, peering down the empty stretch of trail. Sam tried to wave for me to get the truck. I shook my head and motioned that he had the keys. Then I mouthed, "Where are you hurt?" She pointed to the side of her leg. I could see it now, blood darkening her calf. A long way from the femoral artery. Good, but she wasn't racing out of here anytime soon. No way your friend got to the road that fast, he said. So where is she? He scanned the forest. I stood perfectly still, and his gaze passed over me. I'd screwed up. Really screwed up. It'd been too complicated a plan. Too easy for something to go wrong. I'd looked at this man clean-cut and quiet, and at worst I'd seen a garden-variety pervert who'd take us into the woods, maybe try to feel us up and hope we might like it. Not a dangerous predator. Just a middle-aged guy with a creepy fantasy. The gun changed everything. The gun meant I had, yet again, been too confident in my assessment and, this time, wagered lives on it. The man walked back to Sam, who still crouched on the ground, hand pressed to her wounded leg. "Where did your friend go?" he asked. "I don't know. I asked you once." "I won't ask you." He kicked her again. I had to grip the tree to keep from running at him. Heat raged through me, and I thought it was fury until I saw my arms pulsing. "Oh, yes. God, yes, please." The man pulled his foot back to kick Sam again. "I didn't see," she yelled. "You shot me, remember? She was in front of me and then you fired and I fell, and I'm guessing she didn't stick around. You're a little smartass, aren't you?" "No, I'm just smart enough to know that she's smart enough to hide after you shot me. And I'd think you'd be smart enough to know that if I had seen where she went, I'd point you in the opposite direction." "Keep talking, Sam. Please keep talking." I crouched and closed my eyes and focused. I imagined myself changing into a cougar as I got down on all fours and tried to move my arms and legs into what seemed like the proper position. I felt the fever ripping through me and saw my skin bubbling, muscles underneath contorting, but no matter what I did, nothing changed. I didn't change. "Just go look for her," Sam was saying. "You'd like that, wouldn't you, girl? Give you a chance to get away. Tie me up then. You've got rope, don't you? All you guys have rope. All you guys." The man kicked her again. I gripped a tree and squeezed my eyes shut and prayed for my body to change. "You think this is something out of a movie? You don't get it, do you?" "Oh, I get it. Your mommy was mean to you, so now you hate women. Can't face ones your own age, so you chase teenage girls." The man let out a snarl of rage and kicked Sam so hard she started choking. "Does that make you feel better?" she sputtered when she got her breath back. "What are you doing?" I wanted to shout. "Now is not the time to cop an attitude. You're a psycho with a gun." The man grabbed Sam and heaved her up, and it was then that I realized he wasn't holding the gun anymore. It lay beside him, tossed down in his fury. I crawled toward the rifle. The man held Sam up and swung her against a tree. He pulled back his fist and hit her in the stomach. I sprinted for the weapon. He heard me coming and dropped Sam. As he spun, I hit the ground, skidding until I snatched the rifle. Then I rolled out of the way and leaped to my feet. When I pointed the gun at him, he laughed. "Do you even have a clue how to fire that?" I lined up the sight on a tree 50 meters away, and I pulled the trigger. Splinters flew from the trunk. The man paled and grabbed for Sam, but she'd already staggered out of reach. "You won't shoot me," he said. "No." I aimed at his chest. "Whatever you had in mind for us, I think it deserves a bullet or two." "Does it?" "I think you girls deserve whatever you get. You know better than to get in the car with a stranger. If you do it, then that tells me you want something. The only thing we wanted was help. Now toss me your keys." He grumbled and spat insults, but after a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled them out. Then he pitched them at me, hard and fast, and lunged, hoping to startle me so he could get the gun. I saw the keys coming. He was already charging, though, and I knew I had to shoot. Shoot him in the chest. Kill him because that would guarantee our safety. I felt the impulse. Same as I had with Nicole at the tent. Same as I had with Antone. I fired. The bullet hit him below the shoulder. He fell, his mouth working, eyes wide with shock. "It might not be fatal," I said. "Depends on how long it takes you to find your cell phone." I emptied the rifle's magazine. Then I laid down the gun. I'd suggest you tell the police it was a hunting accident. Otherwise I'll have to tell them the truth. I helped Sam to the truck. As she got in, she winced, then glowered at the man lying on the ground. If I could kick him without falling on my ass, I would, she said. Hopefully, he's hurting worse than you are. See if you can find a license or registration in the glove box. The cops are going to get an anonymous tip about this guy. Sam grinned as I started the truck. You can be seriously awesome sometimes, Maya. She paused. And I mean that in a totally non-girl crush kind of way. You don't have to clarify that. Yeah, usually I do. She exhaled in pain and leaned back. Let's get the guys, get me fixed up, and get out of here. I might not have my learner's permit yet, but I could drive. Dad had taught me a couple of years ago so I could take the Jeep back to Mom after dropping him off across the park. We didn't get far before we saw 3 figures running toward us. Daniel and Kenji were in the lead. I don't know who looked more worried or more relieved when I pulled over. Thank God, Daniel panted. We couldn't get the latch open. Corey jogged up. Guy sent Daniel flying when he pulled away. We tried waving and yelling, just to get him to stop, but he didn't hear us. Luckily, we saw where he turned. Took us a while to get here, though. I screwed up, I said. I'm sorry. You got the truck, Corey said. Seems like it worked to me. Yes, please make her stop, Sam called from the truck. She's been apologizing since we got away and it's really getting on my nerves. Sam was shot, I said, lowering my voice. I really screwed. Make her stop. Sam yelled. I got shot a little. He got shot worse. We now have a truck. Mission accomplished. It was your plan, Maya, but we all agreed to it. Stopping to whine is only going to get us nabbed by the cops when that bastard calls 911. I wasn't whining, I said. Close enough. Daniel took the driver's seat. Corey and I got in the back with Kenji. I directed Daniel to take the next side road, where it would be safer for us to stop so I could get out and take a better look at Sam's injuries. The bullet had gone clean through her calf muscle, missing the bone. The bleeding had stopped and I could remove the tourniquet. I cleaned the wound as best I could, then bound it with bandages from the glove box first aid kit. I wanted to find a town and a drugstore, clean and dress it properly, but Sam refused. We were only a couple of hours from Salmon Creek. Plenty of supplies there. So we went home. God, it felt good to say that. After 3 days, home was so close it was almost surreal. Except we couldn't actually just drive into town, because there was a very good chance the Nasts had Salmon Creek staked out. Or the St. Clouds could also be there. That meant we had to get to someone's house without cruising down Main Street. So we took the long way in, circling around the north and coming in from the west. I wanted to go home. To my park. To my parents. Maybe I was being selfish, but I thought they'd be our safest point of contact. The others agreed, but there was no way to drive into the park without going down Main Street. Any other route was a few kilometers hike and Sam couldn't do that. I wasn't sure any of us could. The next best bet was Corey's mom. She was the sheriff, and had raised Corey and his brother, Travis, alone after his dad died. His father had worked in the lab, though. Had he been the one who'd signed on to the experiment? Had Corey's mother been left in the dark, like Daniel's dad? We didn't know, but I trusted her enough to go there. The others did, too, which, considering my recent track record with character judgment, was more reassuring. Corey lived in what we jokingly called the burbs, which meant that his house was on the outskirts of town. The forest edged the property, so we could park elsewhere, then sneak up. "Guess Mom's taking the day off," Corey said as we drew close enough to see the sheriff's SUV in the drive. "Considering she thinks you're dead, I'd imagine she's taking a lot of days off," I said. He paused at that, as if it was the first time he'd really thought it through. Everyone believed we were dead. His mother and his brother, Travis, would be in there, grieving. "Let's get inside," he said. We went through the backyard. The house looked fine, as did the ones around it. The fire had obviously been stopped or diverted before it reached town. Travis was allergic to dogs, so I put Kenji in the garage with a bucket of water filled at the tap. In the meantime, Corey tried the back door, but it was locked. He didn't want to knock, so he retrieved the house key and opened the door. When I followed him in, the smells of the house wrapped around me. My arms started to tremble and at first I thought it was the change starting again, but then I realized it was relief. We were safe. Finally safe. I followed Corey into the living room. When I looked at the sofa, I wanted to throw myself on it. Sprawl across the cushions and turn on the TV. Curl up and watch the flickering images until I fell into a deep sleep. I've never actually done such a thing in my life. Sure, I watch TV. But we don't have one at my house and I'd never felt the lack, because I don't like being cooped up inside. Now, after 3 days in the forest, that human part of me was sick of trees and streams and forest paths. It wanted a sofa and a TV and a shower. God, it really wanted a shower. "Mom!" Corey called. He cut himself short and swore. "I probably shouldn't do that. Scare the crap out of her." He took a step toward the kitchen, then paused. "Or maybe I should yell. Warn her before her dead son appears from nowhere." He glanced at us. "Arg. I'm overanalyzing. When this is over, I need a long break from you guys." "And we'll need one from you," Sam said. "Just relax," I said. "Call her. Find her. It doesn't matter. You're about to give her the best heart attack of her life." He grinned. "Right." He took off, jogging through the house, calling for his mom. Sam started to follow, then saw we weren't and realized this was a moment we should leave to Corey. I collapsed onto the sofa with a sigh. Daniel plunked down beside me, then twisted to stretch out, legs going over mine. "Oh my God," I said, shoving his feet off my lap. "Do you know how bad those smell?" He tried to stick them in my face. I grabbed him around the ankles and tickled the bottom of his feet. He let out a shriek. "Well, you're still ticklish," I said. "And you still giggle like a girl." He tried to grab me, but I held his feet tight. Sam slid from the recliner and limped into the next room. "Our immaturity is scaring her off," I said. "Sorry, Sam. Come back and we'll act our age." "No, I'm just grabbing some food. You two carry on. You've earned a maturity timeout." I let go of Daniel's feet and he pulled them off my lap. "We're home," I said. "Well, not our home but," I leaned back into the cushions and let out a happy sigh. "Close enough for now. Feels good, doesn't it? Unbelievably good." I opened my eyes and glanced at him. "Thank you. For keeping me on my feet and getting us back here. Pretty sure you did at least half of the getting us back here part. And I needed some help staying afloat, too." He paused. "Well, not as much as you, but that's because I'm a guy and we're naturally tougher." I threw a pillow at him. "She's not here," Corey called as he thundered down from the second floor. The rest of the audiobook will be continued in the next episode. Join us on Patreon for early access or more great audiobooks. A link is provided in the video description.